Good afternoon. Welcome to Beyond the Fundamentals. It's good to see you here today. There's already some folks viewing and in the chat. It's always good to see you. We've been putting out a lot of Calvinistic information lately. So if you are new to Beyond the Fundamentals is a little different than what you might expect from a typical ministry or typical Bible study kind of thing, which is not exactly what this is, but it is designed to be helpful. If you like what's going on at Beyond the Fundamentals and you would like to see more of what's going on here, we invite you to support financially. There's 5 different electronic ways that you can do that. The more we are supported, the more we can do. I have a 9-to-5 job just like everybody else. I work for a healthcare company doing cybersecurity compliance. And so that keeps me busy, and I basically have to supplant my time with support that comes from here. It takes a lot of time, space, resources, energy, and money in order to provide, and not to mention hardware, software, and subscriptions, things like that, in order to bring this to you. So if you appreciate that and you benefit from it, consider supporting financially. We are also on social media. We are now on new social media platforms. I see some of y'all popping in on the chat. It's good to see you. We're on new social media platforms. I'll make this a little bigger for a second because if you happen to like Facebook or Instagram or X, formerly known as Twitter, or TikTok or Snapchat, we are on those platforms. And every time we post a short video, which we've been doing more of lately, you will see it pop up on those platforms. So if you like to follow out there, if you like those platforms, be sure to go follow us out there. That's a lot of fun. It's been a lot of fun. Got a lot. Several of our videos have gotten thousands of views on TikTok already, and on Facebook as well. So that's a lot of fun. What else do we have? We also have online consultations. If people want, if you want a consultation with me, basically you would be paying for my time. I do not purport to be any kind of licensed anything or another. I'm not a counselor. I'm not a coach. I'm not a therapist. But if you would like me to take all of the areas of fluency that we have built on this channel over the years and apply it to your situation, your story, and maybe provide some prompts that you think would help, you can do that. And that is a paid consultation because I can't do it for free for everybody. But it is available, and a lot of people have been taking advantage of that. Would you consider getting on Threads? Yeah, I have no problem not to get on Threads. I'm open to getting on to anything, so any kind of social media platform, just let me know, especially if it's free, something like that. But I am going to have to soon find a way to manage them all because all the comments coming in from all the different areas have been overwhelming to some degree. And Veritax is liking the shorts on the Gospel of John that have been coming in lately, so I appreciate that. So yeah, I'm willing to expand out. I think I need to go to Rumble too. Anyway, we're adding all the time. So if you're new to the channel, this might be kind of hard to see because the writing is small. But if you're new to the channel, our approach is a little different from what you might find on other channels because we see things differently. We see Jesus is the way, not a set of beliefs. Let me get my pen out here. See Jesus as the way, not a set of beliefs. We see that love and agape is the highest priority. And usually in my longer version of this that I do for the Ephesians series every Sunday, which we haven't been doing lately either, I go through all the Bible verses for these, which I have multiple for every one of these. I'm not going to go through that now, just so that you know, though. Christ, the light, the candle of the Lord, is inside, not external. We pay attention to phases of growth and basically see 2 stalks, the xylem and the phloem of growth, are consciousness and capacity. We say our understanding of the gospel is believing the gospel is to embody it, not just affirm the facts of it. We understand enlightenment to be a Bible word and a Bible concept that should be reclaimed from the East. We should not have ceded that territory. There's more in the Bible about enlightenment than there is about regeneration, believe it or not. So why don't we talk about that? And we also have this pillar down here of there is unconscious societal and cultural programming that blinds and inhibits people from clear perception. Why am I showing you these, 7 things? The reason is because when you hear me talk and you hear things that sound a little different than what you might expect, a lot of people listen to Christian, teachers. We don't proclaim to teach anything here, by the way. We're not teaching anything. We're just sharing perspective. Then if it helps you, great. If it doesn't, don't. We don't want little BTF repeaters around here just saying what I say. We don't want you to do that. We want you to think, okay? And that might involve disagreeing with me, and that's fine. We want that. But we don't want it from a place of unconscious programming. Anyway, when you find something that sounds a little off, a little different, it's probably because of these 7 things right here. We differ from what you might find in conventional Christianity. Now, today, I'm not going to spend a lot of time. I always have these commenters that say, by the way, go ahead and take a screenshot of this right now. If you want all the Bible verses for what we're going to talk about today, go ahead and screenshot this. We're not going to take the time to go through all the verses for what we're going to say today. I always have some stage 3, stage 2 people popping in and say, I listened for 5 minutes and I never heard a single Bible verse. I'm not listening anymore. We always have those people. So here's your little Bible verses. But the point is, we've covered all the scripture for what we're going to say on our previous content, and we highly encourage you to go look at that. We have a video on Paul's transformation model. We had a stages of growth primer back in 2023, the beginning of that. We did an analysis of Tyler Vela's deconversion, which is also kind of a practicum on how the stages of growth work. I also put out a video not too long ago on how I quickly assess someone's growth stage. So what you're getting today, you could consider it more of an advanced approach for people who are familiar with where we're coming from and what our approach is, and not so much this kind of session is not so much designed to prove or to convince or to persuade. It's to help people increase their fluency in these things that already understand the value of doing so. I'm not here to try to convince you of the value or of the legitimacy or validity of doing so. I am here to help those who already see the value in understanding growth models and growth structures and the biblical support behind them. So we already have a lot of content, and we have a lot more content than this, but these are some of the main ones that have come out. There are 5 things, and we're starting the session now, so pay close attention, okay? Yes, got Roddy in there saying, yes, amen, enlightenment. We have 5 things. Now, when I say 5 things, okay, they are not 5 things. This is not a limit list, okay? There are more than 5 things, but we're going to look at 5 of them today. I want you to understand it that way. Don't get the idea that I have found the last 5 things to consider. It's not like that, okay? For the sake of time, I'm only considering 5 things. There are 5 things that as you mature, they tend to become more vested in the center of yourself and who you are. Now, the Bible language for this would be something like, you have the law of God written on your heart. And that is not like, that shouldn't be understood as, oh, I've memorized the entire law and I know it by heart. It's not that kind of thing. It's like your motivating function of the innermost parts of your being are completely in attunement with the Spirit of God. It's more something like that. And you navigate and negotiate it like you would surfing. It's something that you're constantly doing. Something's always moving, okay? It's always a movement to it. So I want you to envision these things as coming toward you. And we're going to talk about these 5 things. And here's a little graphic, a little cartoon girl here, and you can see these 5 things, and sometimes a little graphic can help you understand or make it stick in your brain a little bit better. And so what you would see is your locus. We call them the 5 loci of maturity, or loci of maturity, I think is the more modern way to pronounce the plural of locus. I'm not saying locust like the bug. I'm saying locus like location. Okay. And basically, the less mature you are, take each of these 5 things. The less mature you are, let's start with authority. Which direction do we go? Authority. And then we'll go to blame and responsibility. Your authority, your sense of authority is external to you. It's parents, it's something else. And we'll go through each one of these. Your sense of blame, whose fault is it? It's always something else. Your sense of responsibility, they should fix that. There's always somebody else who should be doing something about the thing that's wrong, but not you. Validation, you always need a pat on the back, recognition, praise, and control. There's something other than you that's in control of everything, and you are subject to it, okay? The less mature you are, the more external these things are to you. The more mature you are, the more centralized these things are to you, okay? So when you're less mature, you need externally imposed moral guidance, or you won't know what to do. And you will do stupid, dumb things, and you'll get yourself in trouble, and you'll wind up in prison or dead before you can even develop wisdom. The guidance that's given in the New Testament, and this is very important for you to understand. This is gonna sound like heresy at first, okay? But the guidance that's given to you in the New Testament is not intended to be lifelong guidance that you follow until you die. It's not intended to be that. The do's and the don'ts, the vices and the virtues, all that kind of stuff that Paul gives us, for example, like in Galatians 5, you got the vices and then the virtues, the don'ts and the do's. That is guidance for pre-wisdom people, people in whom wisdom has not been cultivated. Because if wisdom has been cultivated in you, you don't need somebody externally telling you what to do. Okay? Because you have wisdom, because you have the law written on your heart. If you try to specify rules, regulations, and laws, the problem is we tend to overestimate our ability to pre-specify relevance. And we see that that's why the founders wanted our Constitution to be something that you can make amendments to, because we don't have the sagacity, the ability to see into the future, all the different locations and scenarios in which we might find ourselves that might make a different rule set or set of guidelines more appropriate to accomplish our values in that scenario. Okay? So the more mature you get, the less rigid you feel about needing to have things specified and written down to the finest detail, because you've got it. You can figure it out. You can control the surfboard yourself without somebody else having to hold it for you. You don't need training wheels anymore. For somebody who doesn't understand how a bike keeps its balance when you start going forward, the idea of not using training wheels just sounds bizarre. Like, how do you do that? What's holding you up? Or like in the Superman movie, he goes, I've got you. And she goes, you got me. Who's got you? Okay. People who are more mature have more capabilities. And the people who are less mature don't understand those capabilities because they can't put themselves in that scenario and imagine it going well. Imagine tightrope walking between 2 skyscrapers while you're juggling. We'd probably all fall and die, okay? Because we can't do that. Can't imagine doing that. But somebody who has cultivated that capacity can do that. And there's some people who can do that kind of stuff with relative ease, especially compared to what it would take for us. I don't know about you. I don't really go tight roping that often. So we have the locus of authority. And I was going to split this down into different sub things, but I'm like, that might be too hard to follow. So I'm just going to do the first 5 so you know what we're covering first. A locus of blame, responsibility, validation, and control. These all move inward as you mature. And you can listen to the way people talk. The further out they are with these things, the more they're, we'll get to it. We'll see. The more you can tell how mature they are. The more responsible self-responsibility and ownership language they have, the more mature they are, typically. Okay. What do my notes say here? Aha. That's interesting there. I might make this a little bit bigger and read it just for your benefit. Relationships. Let me see if I can make this font bigger. I believe I can. Relationships in the immature are based on 2 or more people orienting together to something that is outside of and more authoritative than both of them. These can be anything from a young married couple who thinks that getting closer to God means getting closer to each other, or a church community or having solidarity in the recognition and veneration of certain transcendent beings and their authority structures, and that's the basis for relating. Oh, we all go to the same church. I thought I made this like this. Here we go. So you can see it better. The problem is that there is no authentic self to relate to others. So when commonality is no longer shared, the relatability becomes unmoored. So if you take a married couple, for example, and you're like, oh, the closer we get to God, the closer we get to each other. And then one spouse starts to see things differently. The other one feels insecure because they feel, oh, the more they get away from my idea of God, the more they get away from me. They actually feel that in their body, even if they can't put it to thoughts in their head. So this is why being disfellowshipped from a stage 2 or a stage 3 church results in disruption of social circles, because all the people in there are immature and they're relating to avatars of each other based on proxies, and nobody there is capable of relating straight to people as they are. They're relating on the basis of some sort of shared external authority proxy. And even young married couples do this. And so when I'm counseling people before marriage, I am a wedding officiator. Just did one a few weeks ago, as a matter of fact. So when I'm counseling people before marriage, one of the things that I tell them, we all know that you're going to change over time. And so you're going to be like 5 different people before you die, that sort of thing. Well, it really helps if you know what those are going to be and you agree to navigate those together. You're going to change drastically if you want to stay together. So the more mature and whole a person grows, the more they can genuinely relate person to person without a transcendent or hierarchical proxy to facilitate relating. In other words, you could marry somebody successfully and not see God the same way because you're relating straight to each other. Okay. Somebody said Calvinism equals maturity. No, Calvinism is the opposite. Sorry about that. I'm overcoming a little bit of cold here. Just got to remember to mute and unmute at the right times. We will see in a few minutes, I'll let the cat out of the bag, that Calvinism and the things that it thinks it's against, like provisionism and free grace and dispensationalism, they are all inside the bounds of external, of unconscious programming, and none of them are mature. Okay. Making a lateral move outside of Calvinism could be a step toward becoming metaparadigmatic, but it is not necessarily a vertical move. Okay, you're still immature even if you leave Calvinism. and you need to become metaparadigmatic, which brings us to our next 5 points. Our next 5 points is the 5 loci of maturity that are going outward, or really these loci should be called horizons. Sometimes when I copy and paste slides for templates, I forget to change everything. So what's going to go outward? There are 5 things that go inward, and these 5 things will go outward. Now, my graphic for this one isn't quite as spiffy. But you see these things move outward, such as perspectival capacity, agentic capacity, curiosity, and that goes hand in hand with epistemic humility. Your scope or footprint of awareness. And when we look at the scope and footprint of awareness, we are looking at both spatially, like geographically. Look at your house, your town, your city, your county, your state, your country, the world, the solar system. And then the 5th thing is something that starts to move outward, is being metaparadigmatic, okay? So if you are if you're a Calvinist or a Provisionist or an Arminian or a Mormon, a Jehovah's Witness, or you worship Anton LaVey, all of that is exactly the same. There's no difference between any of that. It's all propositionalism, okay? It's all the same thing. And changing the content of what's in that propositional erector set doesn't matter because it's propositionally normative. So moving from, say, Calvinism, making a lateral move over to provisionism is a good step, and often a necessary step to become metaparadigmatic, but you don't want to be captured by any paradigm. You want to be outside, beyond the paradigm. So you want to become a way where you're not trapped inside a particular paradigm like Calvinism or provisionism or dispensationalism. Being in any one of those are all lateral things that are below the threshold of 2nd-tier consciousness. You're still in 1st-tier consciousness for any of those. Do we have any admins out there? If you notice anybody spamming, we don't want comments that are just yibber-yabbering, like Calvinist talking points or something like that. This is not what this is for. So if we need to delete somebody, feel free to do that. I know I see a couple of you admins out there. A couple of you moderators. So these things will move out from a person as you get older. Your curiosity is very limited. Now, I understand a child is, oh, why is the sky blue? Your curiosity is higher. But what happens is once we get our programming set in, our societal programming, we start picking teams and choosing sides, and we become less curious and less humble. A child knows they don't know. So that's one of the reasons Jesus says is, except ye be converted and become as a little child, you shall in no case enter the kingdom of heaven. Is because you have to have a beginner's mind, you need to have epistemic humility, and a child's mind when it comes to the sake of curiosity. Epistemic humility, okay? So I'm going to give you a comparison here of a mature person versus a not so mature person. The mature person is on top, and the not so mature person's on the bottom. And I mean, just in case you want to see females depicted, we can do the same thing. You know, we got icons for both of them, and the arrows don't change at all. But just want to kind of give you an idea. What you see down here is your scope of capacity. How much can you do effectively? And then we have a scope of concern. And then we have a scope of awareness and a desire for moralistic imposition. Okay. So when you're young, your scope of capacity, what you can effectively do that genuinely helps situations and makes complex systems better without breaking something else is very limited, typically. Now, I know sometimes there will be an exception. Maybe Timothy was an exception. Let no man despise it because of thy youth. But he also says, don't let a novice become a bishop either. So there's got to be a balance there. Then there's your scope of awareness. Your scope of awareness, notice the scope of concern. Your scope of concern, maybe you're a young evangelical and you're like, oh, I have to save everybody. I have to get everybody saved. I have to get them all. They all have to be King James only. They all have to be premillennial fundamental dispensationalists, and they all have to wear skirts and dresses, and they can't watch TV, and they can't watch rated R movies, and they can never go to the beach. And if I don't have everybody like that, then all the people who aren't exactly like that are going to go to hell. And I am concerned for them. I don't want them to go to hell. So your scope of concern is just far-reaching to the ends of the earth. We're sending missionaries everywhere. We have worldwide missions, and we're going to get all the people to bow to this one thing that we all think is right. Your scope of concern is overinflated well beyond your scope of capacity. You're concerned for people with a concern that probably isn't legitimate and probably isn't right, and your ability to actually do something about it is very much limited. Okay. What do we have here? This guy. We don't, Mark Clar 2012. I need you to stop posting Calvinist talking points, okay? Go watch our Calvinist viewer disclaimer, okay? And then if you want to make Calvinist talking points, if you want to be the computer that's occupying human meat flesh in order to restate Calvinist talking points, then you can go do so under the videos that are about those things that you're commenting on, because that's not what this session is about, okay? Yeah. Roberta, you can feel free to delete any comments that are about Calvinism or anything else if you don't have to, but if you don't mind. If people aren't making comments about what we're talking about here, yeah, it's just a distraction. Roddy says, yeah, don't make these things your identity. Then criticisms of these things won't be a personal attack. That's exactly right. And we're going to be getting into that. So then you have this desire for moralistic imposition. Like, everybody must do this. Everybody must do CrossFit. Everybody must be a vegan. Everybody must vote Democrat. Everybody must be for or against abortion. You have this thinking of what you think is right or the way things should be. Is like, I must do it everywhere this way. It must be this way everywhere. And as you get older, you start to, and you'll notice that the language for the immature is always moralistic language. I had one guy comment on one of my Calvinism videos earlier today, and they said they didn't address the content at all because they can't, and they never do. They're like, they said something, and then they said, because you hate the sovereignty of God, blah, 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 blah. There's no curiosity. And it's moral. You hate one of these attributes of God. You hate it. And so, yeah, you can tell when people talk. They'll have moralistic things. Like, people think they should have the right to choose their own wives, but don't think that Christ should have the right to choose his own bride. The way they frame things like that, moralistic framing, like, so Spurgeon was very immature. You go up to a mature person and their scope of capacity has grown a little bit. Their scope of concern is dialed back because they realize what they probably are not capable. So in other words, your scope of concern and your scope of capacity as you get older become more commensurate with each other. You are concerned for the things that you can do something about. Okay. So your scope of concern probably a little bit outside your scope of capacity, because you can notice a need that you might not be able to do anything about, but you also don't have this inflated sense that you can fix everything. like the younger folks do. Oh, I've got the answers for everything. I can fix everything. When you get older, you actually can fix a thing or two, but you dial it back, and and then your scope of awareness, which was very narrow and short down here, tends to grow out. Like, oh, if I'm, and this could be both in distance and in complexity. Down here at the bottom, this could be either years or miles. Just example, doesn't matter. Just how far back you can look, how far forward you can think, how far around yourself you can consider. What are you doing right now that affects the people in Japan? You know, who knows what's going on. And this matters importantly for matters of complexity, because oftentimes when you fix one thing, you're harming something in another area that you didn't intend to harm. For example, there was a campaign one time where they was going to eradicate malaria, and they were going to save so many lives by eradicating malaria in a particular region. Well, what they did killed all the mosquitoes. It disrupted the food chain. That resulted in the crops all dying, and then more people died from starvation than would have died from malaria. You see the problem? Okay. So what that is your scope of awareness doesn't have a lot of quality to it. Oh, I'm concerned for these people over here that could die from malaria, and I want to do something. But that concern lacks the quality to be very helpful. You wind up harming more than you hurt, because a good intention winds up having a negative consequence that you didn't foresee. And that's the problem with complex systems. So yep, let's do that for now. Yeah, there we go. So think about, those are some things to think about: scopes of awareness, scope of capacity, scope of concern, scope of moralistic imposition. And the less mature somebody is, the more moralistically their language is laced. Okay. And if you're Calvinistic, you'll notice from all the stuff that we had to put away, these comments that we had to delete from some of these people already in the comments section, they're moralistically laced. You're morally inferior if you don't agree with them. You're morally superior if you do agree with them. That's the implication. And that's an indicator of lack of maturity. Okay. I know people who they're about in this stage down here, and they're all concerned with what other people should do, what people should eat, and how often they should drink water. I mean, there's different ideologies for different people. And when you're going through that ideological phase, you could be uh, green stage 4 cancel culture, ideologically possessed. I mean, there's all kinds of different ways to be ideologically possessed. And so we did a video talking about our unconscious programming. There are 11 areas of unconscious programming that we covered. And we're not going to re-go over them now, because, well, we're not going to go through as in depth as we did before, because we already have a video on this. But everybody in our society is affected by Cartesian duality, Newtonian cosmology, post-enlightenment rationalism, materialist reductionism, propositional normativity, left hemisphere dominance, literal level only interpretation, moral ideological valence, and God having centralized locality and processing. You don't even know you have that. You see, you would never describe it that way because you don't know you think that way. I know you think that way. Your genetics predispose you to certain thing, and the presumption that the ego is the self. There are 11 things there, and you will notice that there are 12 sides to this object here. What is it? Is it a decagon? No, it's a dodecagon. Not a dodecahedron, because that's like spherical. It's 3-dimensional. So it's a dodecagon, I think, something like that. Yeah, the road to hell is often paved with good intentions, like the Stain song says. This is an interesting comment here. There are not too many people I can actually openly converse with these days. It's been strange. Like, have to put on a different person just to get along and interact with fake reality. It's interesting. It reminds me of a Ron White joke, which is completely inappropriate for here. But sometimes what I encounter a lot, people are having, especially like people who are having trouble in their church. People can sometimes be troublesome. And if you're having a tough time, I'm not necessarily saying that you're the one that's causing the problem, but if it's very difficult to have relations with people, just normal relations with people, problem might be you. You might be too ideologically possessed to be able to get along. Paul and I have a lot of diverse kinds of friends with a lot of diverse kinds of beliefs and activities and interests, and we get along with all of them just fine. So it'd be interesting to see what the issue is there. So inside these 12 things, and yeah, that last one down there, I covered 11 things. And the last one is because it's not just 11 things. There's all kinds of things blinding people. And there's needs to be room for discovering what those other things are. If you are a Christian leader, hopefully you're in tier 2 consciousness. If you're a Christian leader in second half of life wisdom, your job is to figure out what the unconscious programming is of the people you're trying to help and try to disabuse them of their unconscious programming. What Christianity does right now just puts information into people. We indoctrinate and program people. But without taking first out the old, you can't put anything new in there. Okay, so you have to take out the old. There's this old, several stories, because this has happened multiple times, where some great thinker goes to like a Zen Buddhist guru, and they go to a tea party, and they're trying to get wisdom and enlightenment from the guru. And they go to the tea ceremony, and when the guru is pouring, or the Zen master, whatever you want to call it, is pouring the tea for the guest, it keeps pouring, and the cup overflows, and the cup overflows, and the cup overflows until all the tea is gone. There's just a mess everywhere. And the guest is always like, "What are you doing? The cup was full a long time ago." And then the Zen master will say something like, "The cup is you. You are too full of all kinds of things that you already think, and you will not be able to hear anything that I have to teach you. We must first empty the cup before we can put anything in it." And that cup is full of all this unconscious programming. And anybody who is, "I'm a Calvinist, I'm covenantal theology, I'm a provisionist, I'm Arminian, I'm free grace, I'm dispensational," you are in this program. Yet you actually have even more layers of the programming. You have all this programming over here, and you have to be disabused of any of that before you can actually walk in the way that is Christ. That's why on some of these diagrams, I actually specify down here, evangelism cannot happen in here. People will say, "Well, that church is wrong, but at least they're sharing the gospel." Getting people to side with a team inside the conscious programming is not winning them to Christ at all. Has nothing to do with it. And I also want to point out that debate doesn't make any sense. Once you realize how truth does not fare well in a rivalrous debate situation, because truth, when you're saying something, by definition, most people are not outside here. They are inside the unconscious programming. And if you have a debate, the debate is going to be judged by people who are inside their unconscious programming. And so they are going to misevaluate things that do well in a rival, like ideological memes that do well in a rivalrous debate scenario are not true with a capital T. And the things that are true with a capital T aren't always intuitive, and certainly aren't graspable by those who cannot see. They can't see clearly. And the people who can see clearly, they don't need debate to happen because they can already see clearly. The less mature you are, the more you are holding on to a certain formation of words that point to a thing. You're holding on to the pointers. The more mature you are, the more you can see, and the less you need the pointers because you can see it. The other day, my wife and I were going to Texas Roadhouse to meet my dad and have dinner with him for his birthday. And I was putting it into the GPS, even though from where we were, I could see the Texas Roadhouse from where we were. So I really didn't need the GPS because I could see it. I could just drive there. Why use the GPS? And it's that kind of thing to where the all of your dogma and your systems and your Calvinism and provisionism, that's like a GPS. And the only reason you need a GPS is because you can't see clearly. If you could see clearly, you wouldn't need that stuff. So I hope that makes sense. The reason debate is counterproductive is because the jury is effectively impaired. Thus, debate only serves to bolster the impairment. So the unconscious programming is a very big deal. Exegesis and exposition cannot actually happen in here. So churches that claim that they're doing it and also have a statement of faith, it's just laughable. It's not going to happen. So I want to talk to you now about 3 pillars of growth that need to be in place for you, okay? The first pillar is that you need to jettison some stuff. Your brain, your mind is like a house that belongs to a hoarder, okay? And that hoarder, it's just full of junk. It's just full of junk, and all that junk needs to go. But as things go with hoarders, they cannot bring themselves to let go of the junk. They just need it. They just need the junk. They can't bring themselves to let go of it. And that's where a genuine spiritual elder can help you facilitate the letting go that needs to happen. So this person who is still in basically this first pillar here is you need to identify your unconscious programming and start becoming unprogrammed, okay? And that takes a while. It takes a while to realize what it is and retune your intuitions away from it. So while a person is in there, while they are inside this unconscious programming in the box in here, okay? They're in with all these different ideologies. While they are in here, doesn't matter which one, Mormonism, okay? Doesn't matter. They're all the same. Doesn't matter which one. While they are in there, they cannot contribute to groundbreaking exploration until the clutter is cleared. They don't have the capacity. Some people say, well, if you're supposed to be more, perspectively capable, why can't you listen to me? Because you're the 70,000th Calvinist that I've talked to. And that's one perspective. Calvinism is one perspective. It has the Borg representing it in unison, but it is one perspective with a zombie horde as its territory. Okay? So once you hear the perspective and consider it, which I have because I used to be a Calvinist, I don't need to hear it again. I don't need to read the same thing on a different page, and I don't need to hear the same beliefs come out of a different mouth. Okay? I don't need to hear the same wrong interpretations of scripture come from a different mouth or be typed by different fingers. It's one perspective that's already been considered. Okay? So not being interested in somebody who is just an ideologue is not the same thing as not having perspectival capacity. It's very, very different. Is this lecture about deconstructionism? No, I do have a follow-on coming. I'm going to talk soon about what's better than deconstruction and how deconstruction can be avoided while also there are some benefits to deconstruction. So I'll talk about how to avoid the bad and take the good with deconstruction, but it probably should not be called deconstruction. As a matter of fact, I might even get you guys to help me name it. That'll be kind of interesting. But no, it's not about deconstruction. This is about the 5 loci of maturity and the 5 horizons of maturity. And there are 3 pillars that we're talking about right now. So I'm telling you what we're talking about. Just if you just listen, when people ask this kind of question, what they're trying to do is their left hemisphere is trying to categorize and map what's going on to something that they think they've already figured out, because they're not doing a very good job of listening on the fly. And hearing like this, exegesis is the way to Calvinism, so we need to get rid of it, right? No, exegesis is not the way to Calvinism. Exegesis is way out. The problem is that exegesis can't happen in here. Exegesis is great, but it can't happen in here. So a Calvinist cannot exegete Scripture. By definition, they cannot exegete Scripture. And the more stuff you add in here, the worse they are going to be at it, okay? So Greek or Hebrew is not going to help you inside here. It will only help you outside here. So if you're inside here like James White, doesn't matter how much Greek you can fluently spew out of your mouth, you have not gotten past the first pillar of growth, which is to be disabused of the hoarded clutter mind unconscious programming. So don't hear things that I'm not saying, okay? You're not the first person to do that. So you need to get the junk out. The second pillar of growth is you need to develop fluency in growth models. And I have this understanding growth models. I use the phrase spiritual puberty. You have the talk with your kids before they go through puberty. And you're like, your body's going to undergo some changes. Things are going to be different. Your voice is going to change. You're going to start growing hair in weird places. You have this talk with your kids. Things will change. Well, as the child is to the adult is to the sage. So if the adult is going to become a sage, we need to tell people, we need actual genuine elders to explain to people that your soul and spirit and your mind are going to undergo some changes. And you can kind of think of it as something like a spiritual puberty. There are going to be some changes in the shapes, mechanisms, ways you do and don't think. Yeah, this discussion is not about Calvinism at all. It's just Calvinism is a really good example of a very low level of cognition and maturity. So it's helpful to bring it up. So you need to understand expanding consciousness versus expanding capacity, knowing what growth looks like, knowing how to model it out for yourself, what kind of changes will you undergo, what to expect. And you can tell a kid in the second grade, hey, when you get to the ninth grade, you're going to be doing algebra. You're going to be doing this and this. Well, when they're in the second grade, they don't understand that. They're not there yet. They don't have the tools to do that kind of thing. But as they get up higher, they can. Know what will happen to you as you change. Without this knowledge, change will happen to a person and the new capacities won't be understood and they will be dormant. They will atrophy. You're not going to be developing them. And basically, it's going to be disruptive. You're not going to be satisfied with your church anymore. You're not going to know why. You're not going to be satisfied with your marriage anymore. You're not going to know why. There's going to be all kinds of changes, things that you change. You're going to want to suddenly do different things. You're going to have a midlife crisis. You're not going to know why. Okay. Understanding this kind of things helps you understand why. Okay. So that's very important to know. Second pillar. Third pillar is establishing clear personal goals. Like have something that is bespoke to you personally that you are aiming for that is only for you. Okay. Like if you're going to go be an Olympic athlete doing XYZ sport, like that's your goal. That's not my goal. So what you will do if we go to the gym together and I'm trying to get better at playing volleyball and I'm doing workouts that help with that, but you're trying to get better at doing something else like sprinting, I don't know. Our workouts are going to be different. And it's not that one's good and one's bad. It's just tailored to our goals and needs. The less mature people need standardization everywhere. They can't understand something be tailored to goals and needs. Okay. When I talk about being able to break rules or no longer needing the rule book, people think that I'm advocating like breaking all the rules or licentiousness or having license to sin. And it's actually kind of the opposite. Okay. When you're a kid, you have a template way that you're doing things. When you're younger, you have a template way that you're doing things. But if you're striving to do something with intensity, like say you're going to become an Olympic sprinter, you're probably going to have much more stringent rules on yourself, a much more stringent path to accomplish this thing. And maybe one or two of the things you're doing to make that good would be breaking the rules if you were just trying to be normal, or if you were trying to optimize for something else. If you're optimizing to run 26 miles and you're optimizing to sprint 400 meters, those are two very different kinds of conditioning. And it's not that one's right and one's wrong. See, the independent Baptist where I grew up, like, oh, we can't have that. We can't have him doing this and him doing this. We need everything the same. Everybody got to follow the same thing. It's like, well, depends what you're going for. So you need to understand what your goals are, what you're aiming for, and you will adjust that as you go. Okay. So those are the three things you need to work on. And we're going to talk about those real quick. These three things. Removing what blocks your growth. Before any meaningful growth can occur, a person must shed unnecessary unconscious programming, remove maladaptive patterns, dismantle inherited scripts, drop survival-based coping that once protected them but now imprisons them, release identity-level attachments that keep them stuck, like your Calvinism and your provisionism. This is the Exodus stage before the Promised Land, but you could choose a term, ways to envision this, okay? Could be like liberation or unburdening. Think about the hoarder's house, okay? That's what we're talking about over here, the first pillar. About this first pillar. Ways to envision this could be liberation, unburdening, clearing the ground, deconstruction, the healthy kind. There are different ways to deconstruct. There's a guy I listen to, I think his name is Cornthwaite, and it's actually helped me to distinguish what happened to me is very different than what happened to him, even though we see some things similarly. Excavation, disentanglement, unlearning, shed and release, freedom from work. It involves undoing learned programming. And the problem with that is you're unconscious of the programming. To you, it's just common sense. It's intuition. This viewpoint's bleeding off every page. That's what you think, but that's your programming talking. You don't even know what it is. Breaking free from constraints, restoring agency, leaving immaturity structures behind. So the problem with this first one, all this programming down here, when it comes to free will, people in here, in the box, they actually don't have free will. They don't have free will. They're operating within constraints that make them almost 100% predictable. Like if I'm talking to a Calvinist, a Calvinist doesn't have any free will. So if I'm talking to a Calvinist and we start talking about, say, Cornelius, I know exactly what they're going to say. They could have never had a conversation about Cornelius ever before. But if they are a staunch Calvinist and they understand Calvinism, I know what they're going to say when I start pointing out observations from the text. I know what they're going to say. So they're not. It's like they're not even there. Okay. So we need to leave that kind of stuff behind. We need to get rid of that stuff. The second pillar, understanding growth models, kind of like understanding what kind of spiritual puberty you're going to go through after reaching adulthood at some point. The most neglected pillar in most people's development is not understanding post-adult growth models. If a person has experiences that outgrow their old container but has no model to interpret it, the growth becomes chaotic, repressed, and destabilizing. They wind up leaving church, getting divorced, losing their kids. All kinds of stuff happen like that when they don't know what's happening to them. So you need to know what's happening to you. Why are you feeling more capacity, more compassion, more conflict, more paradox? Why does my old worldview feel too small? Am I progressing or backsliding? Exactly. Cornelius had opened eyes and ears of the work of the Spirit. That's exactly what they say. It's so funny. They came in and provided that. With Cornelius doesn't get saved till like chapter 10, verse 43, and that's backed up by what chapter 11 and chapter 15 say. But Calvinists have to get him. They have to get him a little saved. They have to get different body parts saved, his eyes and his ears saved a little bit before he gets saved. That's every Calvinist does it. Every Calvinist gets Cornelius saved gradually before he's saved, because they have to, because they're ideologically motivated. You know exactly what they're going to say. Oh, God gave me ears to hear. Well, that's not in the text. You're saying that because your ideology requires to say that. Cornelius had opened eyes. Text doesn't say that. You're saying that as a post hoc rationalization of your ideology. Your ideology needs you to say that. And I have said this to, if I've said it to one, I've said it to 100 Calvinists. Same conversation with every Calvinist. That's what they say. Bam, right there. Now, I'm not advocating for free will. I never have. What I'm just saying is that inside here, if you're an ideologue in here, you don't have any. Okay? If you're a Calvinist, provisionist, you don't have any. Your body has the capacity for free choice, but it exists out here, not in here. So you need to get rid of all this unconscious programming. So the second thing we are on is, this is what allows transformation to continue rather than to collapse. You need to take charge. When I was in the military, we had an officer guidebook so you can map out your career and understanding growth. And they will always tell you, you're the only person that is most concerned about your career. Nobody cares about your career as much as you do. So you need to manage it. And that comes to your growth and transformation. Okay. Your stage 3, stage 2 pastor at your, church doesn't understand any of this. They are not going to help you get out of stage 3. They are going to accuse you of backsliding when you leave stage 3. You are then going to become the enemy. Ways to envision the second pillar, understanding growth models, is something like orientation, awareness, frameworks for flourishing. Growth literacy is the main one that I hope stands out to you. Developmental awareness, conscious understanding, mapping of maturity, a map of maturity, inner cartography, growth intelligence. Growth literacy needs to become intuitive. It's a skill you can have, having growth assessment literacy to assess yourself and people that you're dealing with. Growth is something that can be understood, tracked, and consciously navigated. It's not just some magical thing that happens. Every church you go to talks about that. They will say, oh, it's good to grow, it's good to transform, want to be more like the image of Christ. Do they have any mechanism in place to evaluate if you're further along than you were before, or how to select goals, or what behaviors or thought patterns constitute growth? That's what we're here for. No, they don't. I'm just, short answer. No, they don't. That's what we're here for. The third one was establishing clear goals and metrics, and these are going to be personal to you. This is the executive function pillar, capabilities. You purge your old programming, you understand growth conceptually, and now, without direction, if you don't have a particular goal that you are aiming for, then your growth is going to be episodic, accidental, reactive, and unfocused. You don't want it to be any of those things. You want it to be proactive and intentional. This pillar is where the person becomes the author of their life, not just the subject of their circumstances. We are co-creating the reality in which we live by everything that we do. We talk about that in our Ephesians series a lot more, so I'm not going to go. Like, okay, this kind of guy. If you can read John Owen, you are mature. If you don't realize what a doofus John Owen is, you have no business calling yourself a Christian. Let me see. How long do I want to hide this guy? I'll do 30 minutes and see if he learns a lesson between now and then. Where are we now? So ways to envision this third pillar: intentional direction, purpose formation, mission crafting, personal governances, trajectory setting, deliberate development, goal stewardship, and self-authorship. As Vervaeke is fond of using the word autopoiesis, coined by biologists Maturana and Varela, if I'm not mistaken. it basically means self-creation. So you're making your future self. You are designing. It's weird. It's this co-creating thing where you are creating your future self, and in some sense, a way to envision it is that your future self is already there, pulling you along toward itself to become better like it. And in some ways, if you're becoming like Christ, then your future self is the Christ you're becoming. Think about that. This involves autonomy, agency, personal mission, identity level empowerment, and responsibility. So you can envision these three things like this: disentanglement, growth, literacy, and self authorship. And then we're going to move forward. Locus of authority. These are the things that are going to move closer inside you as the graphic. They're going to become more vested in the self as our graphic portrayed earlier. Okay. So let's look at what these things are. First one is a locus of authority, including moral authority. When you are younger, it must be externally imposed from something like a rule book, an institution, a preacher, a parent, a tribal identity, a political ideology. Y'all need that to be bigger so you can see it. A political ideology, a tribal identity, a sacred text interpreted by somebody else. They do not experience morality as something that emerges from inner discernment, empathy, systems awareness, or wisdom. Moral wisdom comes from experience, being oriented toward a goal. This is what you want down here. Moral wisdom, as you grow, as you mature, comes from experience being oriented toward a goal, coupled with lessons from successes and failures that are results of your own choices, which is what the rest of that should say. I should have finished that thought when I was typing that. So when you are not mature, morality must be clear, black and white, rule-bound, externally enforced, simple enough to not require introspection. And it is very much moral. So Jonathan Haidt talks about the 6 moral foundations: care, harm, liberty, oppression, fairness, cheating, loyalty, betrayal, authority, subversion, sanctity, degradation. So if you're talking to somebody who is an ideologue and they are immature, well, being an ideologue and being immature go together. Like, especially in the religious realm, if they're staunch Calvinist, Mormon, provisionist, Jehovah's Witness, anything like that, you're going to get a lot of this, a lot of authority subversion, moral language, moral implications, and a lot of sanctity degradation implications. And maybe a little loyalty, betrayal, moral implications. And the less mature a person is, the more moralistic their language and thinking is. The more mature they are, the more they dial back on the moralistic stuff, and the more functional they are. Now, when I talk about this, people get me wrong. They're like, well, shouldn't you be moralistic? Isn't it immoral to kill people? Shouldn't do something like that. And you're not understanding what I'm saying, or I'm not communicating it clearly. What I'm talking about is when it comes to beliefs and dogma. I'm not talking about actions on whether or not you should kill people. Okay, of course you shouldn't kill anybody. That's when it's appropriate to be moralistic. But when it comes to, oh, you don't believe in this attribute of God the same way that I do, you must be morally inferior. Of course, people don't say it exactly that way, but that's the implication. This guy says, Kevin does not like Flowers anymore. What happened? So sad. No, me and Flowers are good friends. We like each other. We know we disagree, and we like our disagreements. Okay. Flowers is fine. I don't have a problem with him. I still listen to him. We still talk. We're good. You don't have to dislike people when you are not in the same place as them. And that's another thing of immaturity. Okay. Is that you can get along and not see things the same way. And me and Flowers don't have any problems. I don't, the fact that I see provisionism as another branch of propositionalism doesn't mean that I hate the people who are ensnared by there any more than I hate, preschoolers or kindergartners or second grade. Just because we're not in the same classroom doesn't mean that we hate each other. Okay. Oh, a rare good statement. Moralism and morality are two different things. That's a good way to say that. So the second one, locus of blame. Okay. When somebody is immature, everything is someone else's fault. They're focused on past causes of current struggles. And they might be external circumstances, their environment. Look at this neighborhood I lived in. Look at how I was raised. Look at all the jobs I've had. Everything is something else's fault. It's some kind of external thing. It's your parents. It's your religious background. It's that church we went to for so many years. It's the schools that I had to go to or didn't have access to. It's my socioeconomic situation. It's my immutable characteristics. Maybe your race, maybe your sex, maybe you're ugly. I don't know. Just whatever. It's something that's out of your control. Maybe it's your genetics, maybe it's your current or your ex-spouse. That's the blame for everything. So a less mature person is always presenting others with problems. There's no recommended solutions. No recommended solutions are adequate for them, and there's always an excuse for why solutions won't work. Even opportunities are met with complaints. So we probably all know somebody like this. And of these 5 things, 3 of them form a triad. Here's a little bit better graphic. 3 of them form a triad where blame and responsibility and control. So blame is like bad things are other people's fault. Responsibility is whether or not you decide to take up the mantle to do something. Okay. And then control, how much agentic control do you have on the environment and situation and the surroundings? So there are 2 different, you need to pay attention to this. There are 2 different types of problems you can have in your life. There are passive problems and there are active problems. If you have passive problems in your life, it's like, oh, they did this at work again. Oh, the water heater broke. Or there's just always something happening that affects you. And you are subject to all these things that are happening to you and you're reacting to them. Those kinds of people have a decreased sense of meaning and purpose in their life. But if your problems are all active problems, like I'm setting goals and I'm trying to reach them, I'm taking on this responsibility, I'm trying to fix this thing, I'm trying to make something better, trying to invent this thing, trying to do something good. People who have a higher ratio of active problems in their life than passive problems have an increased sense of meaning and purpose in their life. So that's important to bear in mind. Let's look at that's what we were just looking at there. Your immature posture. Problems are experienced as passive. Things happen to me because of circumstances, systems, and other people. This externalization increases the locus of blame, decreases perceived control, and prevents the adoption of meaning and responsibility. Passive problems produce a decreased sense of meaning and purpose because the individual has no authorship in the struggle. You want to have things in your life that you are the author of. Okay? A mature posture is problems become active, challenges, opportunities, and goals one voluntarily adopts and participates in shaping. The locus of responsibility becomes central and honest assessment of what part of this is mine to do, what part of this is mine to address. One of the things that I took up is I saw Calvinism as a huge problem in churches, and I also saw that how it was being addressed so far by people who thought of themselves as non-Calvinists wasn't sufficient. So that's why I decided, well, I'll try something. I'll put, because my perspective that I held wasn't being represented anywhere. And it's been a fun little thing. The locus of control expands, not controlling others, but exerting agency within the sphere one can influence. Active problems produce increased sense of meaning and purpose because voluntary struggle creates narrative coherence and personal authorship. Blame locks the person into passive suffering. Responsibility converts problems into chosen challenges, and control turns those challenges into purpose-generating action. Now, when it comes to blame, uh, the 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 test case or the proof of principle for this is like the worst case scenario is probably Viktor Frankl. When you talk about somebody who has the right to blame all the externalities, he's in a concentration camp. For those of you who don't know, Viktor Frankl, he was in a concentration camp and he wrote a book called Man's Search for Meaning. And he advocated that you could retain meaning, dignity, and purpose even while in a concentration camp. And so if that is the case, what excuse do we have? Yes, the same thing about Helen Keller. So here we are, locus of responsibility. When something needs to be done, they first consider what they can do to improve the situation. That's where you want to be. You know, if you ever lived in a house where there are more than 3 people or so. When I was growing up, I was one of 3 siblings. There were 5 people in the house. And when I had kids, we had 4 kids. So there were 6 people in the house. And what you notice when you have more than 3 people in the house, there are a lot of things that get done or left undone that nobody knows who did it. Or people keep walking by trash that needs to be picked up, or towels that need to be picked up, or trash that needs to be taken out, or dishes that need to be washed. It's just somebody else is going to do it. You see? You notice that kind of thing. This kind of stuff, these kind of people. I wish there was a way to. No, this is not an open theist Pelagian channel. But you are open theist and Pelagian for asking the question. Put him in timeout for, say, 30 minutes and see if that is enough to adjust the attitude. We have a video that talks about why Calvinists are more semi-Pelagian than anybody else. You should probably go watch that. We also have a Calvinist viewer disclaimer, so you should go watch that. Before making these, I mean, every Calvinist who's not familiar with this channel, they come saying the exact same things, which is like little robots, None of them ever had an original thought in their head. Alexander Solzhenitsyn said, original or intellectual thought is not imitative. And all a Calvinist can do is just imitate and parrot old talking points from other people that have already been said elsewhere, which we have already considered all of them and evaluated them all. Yes, I don't know where this guy is coming from, but part of our disclaimer is that we do not advocate for free will as an axiomatic premise. So, you're not stepping on our toes here. So they'll see things, and when you're more mature, you'll see things that need to be done and not shy away from getting involved, but also know how to not overcommit. Your present circumstances are seen as opportunities. You have daily micro improvements in what you're doing. Setbacks are seen as challenges. Giving up is not an option. You're actively involved in addressing perceived problem. Like one of the things I decided to take on is the problem of Calvinism in Christianity. It's a parasite in the body of Christ. And so when I decided to take on a perceived problem, that's what I'm involved in to some degree. This guy says you cannot debunk Calvinism; it's too perfect. And I don't know if this is a joke person or not, but Calvinism has been thoroughly debunked years before you made that comment on this channel. Oh, same guy just banned, has multiple accounts. Okay, we're just going to put him in timeout for 30 minutes too then. See, it's an example that's a good sign of immaturity. They can't come to a channel like this. There's no perspective. There's no curiosity. There's no perspectival capacity. They can't listen to another perspective. They have to map things down. Is this a this? What's I have 4 categories into which bad guys can fit. Which one are you? Okay. There's no curiosity. There's no perspectival capacity. They can't sit and listen to something. That's pretty funny. So the person who has a locus of responsibility, who's internalizing, they overcome adversity, they adapt to circumstances, they're resilient, anti-fragile, and even tropophilic. You say, what does tropophilic mean? It's the next stage after anti-fragile. It means that the person has gone beyond being, they're not just anti-fragile, but they thrive on uncertainty. The kind of person who could make money in a stock market regardless of whether it's going up or down, volatile, whatever. They're always making money. They just thrive on it. This is a good example here. This guy says, I came from New Age into basic free will theology, and through the Bible study went full Calvinistic. So what's he doing? He is over here inside the inside the programming. Let's see if I can remove these. I need an eraser. I don't even know what some of these buttons do. But they're inside their unconscious programming, and they're laterally hopping from one form of propositionally normative thing to another. Okay. From New Age to free will, like either whether it's dispensationalism or Arminianism or provisionism or free grace, okay, to Calvinism. It's like a frog hopping around on a lily pad, but he hasn't left the pond yet. Okay. And that's the problem. They go full Calvinistic. So one of the markers of maturity is to become meta-paradigmatic and no longer be subject to being inside a paradigm, which is where you are. So they assume. Oh, I need to get rid of that comment now. The internalized locus of responsibility assumes the prerogative to arrange relationships in beneficial ways and is not subject to relationships that are not helpful. I think one of the best, when it comes to relationships, especially marital relationships or spousal, whatever you want to call them, it would be very helpful if we used a word other than marriage. Like, I have a video already out there called Why It Can Be Confusing to Go to the Bible for Modern Marriage, because it would be clearer to you. You think I'm downplaying the Bible. I'm not. It's just that what's happening today and what was called marriage in the Bible are two very different things. Okay. And what's happening today, they should change the name of it to something like contractual pair bonding or something like that. Contractual pair bonding. And that way you would know that what's happening today in the government when you get married is not the same. It has nothing to do whatsoever with what is called marriage in the Bible. Two different things. And that would be very helpful for people to understand. And so when it comes to having relationships, instead of overlaying a role and a societal set of expectations onto the other person, you actually negotiate in new and fresh ways. Like, how do we want to structure this relationship? Who's responsible for what? Who's going to do this? Who's going to do that? You can negotiate everything exactly the way you want it. And you may not even realize that you may not even realize how bad of a situation your marriage does not have to be. Calvinism is as sharp logic and logic math as a result of true, precise exegesis. Okay, this is what's called epistemic arrogance. Okay, and this is a great sign of immaturity right here, an overinflated sense of certainty. Okay. Internal locus of responsibility, you're adept at identifying solution paths to problems, and you have the capacity to assist others. For the fourth one is locus of validation. Now, validation, okay? Getting validated. For an immature posture, they will have a strong dependence on external approval, praise, reassurance to regulate the self-worth. It creates a reoccurring feedback loop instead of insecurity in which it creates a recurring feedback loop of insecurity in which lack of affirmation triggers defensiveness, people-pleasing, or performative behavior. Excuse me. Identity becomes entangled with ideology, moralism, or group belonging as a substitute for internal stability. Okay? When somebody needs external validation, what often happens is they get their identity entangled or enmeshed with like an ideology that's associated with an in-group. Okay? Because then they feel like they are part of something that is good and solid and historic and right and moral, and they're part of that. And that's now part of their identity. So then when you say something that exposes the error of that ideology, because their identity is entangled in it, they feel personally attacked and they get defensive. And they have to say defensive things. And it's their body and their limbic system starts to react the same way your limbic system would react if you felt like you were in danger. All right. I don't know if we have any put this guy in timeout for 30 minutes. I feel sorry for the people who come here who want this growth and transformation content, and they just have so much spam from the immature ideologues in the comment section. There's a practical exercise right there. A poor locus of validation makes for some terrible middle managers. Yes, this kind of stuff is very important. Me and Paula discuss this kind of thing all the time. We discuss our coworkers and everything. We kind of have people figured out where they are on some of these matrices. So it has a business application. It has a work and a business application for sure. So your mature posture is when you're growing the ability to self-validate through internal standards, integrity, honest self-assessment. A stable identity increasingly decoupled from externalities like Calvinism or Provisionism or the Republican Party or the Democrat Party. Solitude becomes enjoyable rather than threatening. Emotional volatility tied to others' opinions diminishes, enabling grounded decision-making and rational clarity. Security no longer requires others to comply with one's ideology or worldview. So when somebody comes into the chat and there's a bunch of people here who don't share my worldview, they feel insecure. And so they have to poke the bear. They have to do something about it. They have to try to reestablish security. They're really reassuring themselves. When they denigrate other people's viewpoints or what they think other people's viewpoints are, they're really trying to establish security for themselves. Chronic external validation seeking, like you see in cluster B patterns, narcissism, borderline personality, histrionic, it can reflect arrested development, a reminder of why cultivating an internal locus of validation is essential. One thing Paula and I noticed, Paula and I had developed a fluency in these kinds of things where we can spot people who need external validation pretty quick. Oftentimes within just 3 minutes of meeting them for the first time, we kind of have them, okay, they're on that train. They're on that train. They're on that frequency. Kind of figure it out. And it's not in a judgy way, but just so that we know what we're dealing with. You can't help but develop fluencies. It's like if somebody showed you a billboard with words written on it, you couldn't help but read them. Okay, there they are. They're just there. And so with some cluster B patterns, a child needs a lot of external validation. So when you have cluster B personality disorders, it's like those emotional components of the child never matured, and it stays immature. And that's how you get your borderlines and your narcissists, that sort of things. I need to probably blow my nose here so I can keep talking. So Geo, I guess I'm going to call him Geo, says, my biggest fear is how can I know that I haven't bought into a belief that is not true, but am blinded by my presuppositions or understanding? Well, that is, knowing that is a developed sense that occurs over time. But most importantly, having the concern, I don't like the word fear, but having the concern is a good sign, and it can lead you to epistemic humility, willingness to hear other perspectives and not moralistically debase other people for having other perspectives, and also being willing to grow. And so when you're metaparadigmatic, the best thing really, don't buy into beliefs. Don't buy into beliefs. They say, well, you have to believe in Jesus or you're going to go to hell and this kind of thing. Okay. Start with simple things, but don't fall for these systems where you have to have all this stuff different ways. God is beyond us and he's unknowable, but here's his 5 attributes. No. Locus of control. When it comes to the locus of control, the immature posture, which we'll deal with first, the immature posture perceives life as something that happens to them rather than something that they can influence. They tend to externalize responsibility, blaming circumstances, systems, luck, or other people for outcomes. They exhibit low agency, waiting for rescue, permission, or ideal conditions before taking action. They're easily overwhelmed by complexity because external forces feel dominant and unmanageable. A mature posture, thought I took that comment down to make the screen easier to see, recognizes, a mature posture recognizes and embraces the sphere of influence that they do possess, the choices, habits, responses, environment, and shaping behaviors. A mature posture acts proactively rather than reactively. It sees setbacks as adaptive challenges instead of personal attacks. Has an increasing ability to create conditions favorable or desired outcomes through intentional action. That's one way you can evaluate things. Do you get the desired actions from your do you get the desired results from your actions, kind of thing? It develops a steady confidence rooted in agency rather than control over others. Growth in this locus of control allows a person to move from passivity toward authorship of their life, replaces helplessness with empowered stewardship. And you can always tell. So those 5 things of authority, blame, validation, responsibility, control, you can tell by talking to somebody in a normal conversation where these loci are for them. Okay. So now we're going to look at the 5 horizons, the 5 things that should be expanding as you grow and mature. And the serenity prayer, as Robert points out, is a really good one. Grant me the what does it say? And the wisdom to know the difference. It's about the things you can control. Something like the grace or the peace to tolerate the things you can't control, and then the strength to exercise control where I need to, and then the wisdom to know the difference. Something like that. I forget how it's worded, but yeah, serenity prayer is good. What else do we have? I'm looking at comments. Some people are still posting stuff that has no business. They have no business posting because it has nothing to do with what we're talking about here. If you have a message to say, if you have a message to say that you're trying to use our comment section to say your message, or actually the message that you're parroting, go start your own channel and say your message there. This comment section is for people who are listening to this content and are interested in discussing this content. So if you're here, please be mature enough to do that like a big boy. Okay. So the first thing that expands outward is your expansion of relational awareness, your perspectival capacity. In every development model, spiral dynamics, Fowler, all the things, the ability to genuinely enter another's frame is the first outward expression of the self. This includes theory of mind, empathy, dialogue capacity, perspectival pluralism, and differentiated communion. This starts off as a child. If you hold up a ball, now I have some balls over here, but they're not what I'm trying to show you. But I will show you nonetheless. I have a, well, I shouldn't use a green one. It's no fun. It just disappears. I'll do a yellow one and a blue one. If I show you a ball that say yellow on one side and blue on the other side, if I turn it to where you see the blue side, if you're somewhat mature as a child, you would be able to deduct that I'm seeing the yellow side. But then if I turn the ball around and I show you the yellow side, you would be able to see the yellow side. You would know that I'm seeing the blue side, right? So and then this grows with increasing complexity. A less mature child, when they see the yellow side, they think you also see the yellow side. They can't understand that somebody else can see something different than you, and they're both okay. It's okay that I see the blue side and you see the yellow side. So when you're talking to somebody who's an ideologue, an immature person cannot understand the concept of understanding a point of view that you also don't buy into and identify with. They think that understanding is believing. So, and that's why they can never steel man an argument as opposed to straw man an argument. And then when you don't believe their perspective, they think you don't understand it, because to them, understanding and believing something go together. They can't conceive of them being two separate things. So tedious. So perspectival capacity, the person. And so, for example, when I've been posting videos on against Calvinism lately, the Calvinists, they always show up in the comment section thinking there's no curiosity, there's no questions. They don't understand my position. They think I support Arminianism and free will and election by foreknowledge. I think I support all these things, and I don't. Okay. Or that I'm going to advocate for those things, and I don't. And they don't ever. They have an inability to understand somebody else's perspective. They don't even ask. They don't care. They can't hear it when you try to share it. They just fire things at you that map you into something that's pre-known to be bad. Oh, you're a Pelagian. You're a this. You're a that. They can't hear you. Can't even hear you say 5 words, and that's a mark of ideology. It's a mark of immaturity. J 3127 says, hearing you read, a mature posture of locus of control reminds of Viktor Frankl. Yes, it should. I don't know if we did talk about Viktor Frankl just a few minutes ago. And I don't know if you joined us late or if you didn't hear that, or if you did and that's why you're commenting. I don't know. But yeah, Viktor Frankl for sure. So your perspectival capacity is you have the ability to, first of all, you're not, well, we'll talk about metaparadigmatic, but you're not identified with any particular. You see these guys in the comments, they think that if you're not a Calvinist, there's something wrong with you. That's what's wrong with you. You left Calvinism. No Bible, no God, just vain, empty philosophy. I mean, they're moralistic. That's they can't understand another perspective. And other perspectives are morally bad. That's a sign of immaturity. Okay. So in one sense, it's annoying that these people have come into the chat. In another sense, they are good object lessons of of bad examples of what not to be and what not to do. The second thing that should expend outward as you mature is your agentic capacity, your expansion of effective influence. This is the outward correlate of the inward locus of control. As internal agency grows, outward agency expands. And this includes the ability to affect change, to make things happen. Probably one of the best examples of this is some of the, like Jeff Bezos, who doesn't shop at Amazon. How much has he controlled, affected change in the environment in which we all live? That is agency. I am filming this and live streaming it on an Apple device right now. So there's, Steve Wozniak, Steve Jobs, and those folks. And a lot of you might be watching it on a smartphone. So, I mean, those smartphones went from, cell phones went from some people had them, some people didn't, to everyone's got a smartphone. Practically everyone's got a smartphone. Talk about affecting change. That's a big change. And now AI is changing, the internet changed things. People have to do things. So we are co-creating our reality as we go, whether we like it or not. Whatever you're doing right now, your future will be in a place where you did what you're doing right now. So when I take a sip of this coffee cup here, okay? I now live in a future where I have taken a sip of that coffee, and that cannot be undone. And that has trajectory implications. Yes. Nicholas has a good point here. The trolls have exposed themselves and have proven some of the points you've made thus far. So yeah, they're good good illustrations. Case in points. So you're going to have active problem solving, leadership capacity, responsibility for outcomes, increasing spheres of influence with agentic capacity. And the third one that goes out is your curiosity. And these are in no particular order per se. This is your expansion of epistemic openness, and this goes with epistemic humility. Now, this should not be, when it comes to humility, we should never confuse humility for self-deprecation. I'm so sinful and I'm so worthless. God should never reach down and save a poor wretch like me, okay? That's self-deprecation. And when you say that, if you're saying it in accordance with an ideology like Calvinism, you are presuming, like somebody said in the comments, Calvinism is perfectly right. It's like math. That is epistemic arrogance. You think you have absolute certainty, and of all people, you've identified the ideology that's got all the certainty. Of course you did. Okay? They have no curiosity. They have no... So epistemic arrogance and false humility, self-deprecation, I'm so worthless, they go together. So when someone starts deprecating themselves because their ideology requires it, it is actually epistemic arrogance. It's one of the most arrogant things they can do. And it's the whole Dunning-Kruger effect, that kind of thing. Or was that guy who said Calvinism is so perfect it's like math and it has no... That's the dumbest thing. I can't believe these people who write these comments. I can't believe they're either like real people and not just like fake accounts or something like that. I mean, these people, they shouldn't be allowed to go to the grocery store unsupervised. I mean, these people are not well. So with curiosity, you're going to have epistemic humility. So people are really they're not bought in to a particular ideology. They are like if they're a young Earth creationist, they can actually listen curiously to an evolutionary biologist and see what they have to say. And if they're an evolutionary biologist, they can actually listen to someone like Michael Behe and see what he has to say. Okay. And they're genuinely curious. They genuinely want to know. And if the way they understand things is flawed, the reason they're pursuing science or any line of inquiry is to discover those flaws and update the way they see things instead of being so pre-committed to how they see things and everything else is evil. You see? So this corresponds to the curiosity with epistemic humility. It corresponds to Fowler's transition to individuative reflective faith. And you can all these other the relevance realization with Vervaeke and right hemisphere openness to novelty that we get from McGilchrist. Curiosity is a developmental marker, and it is one of the things whereby you can very quickly assess where somebody is. If somebody is just coming at you, as soon as they recognize you don't share their ideology and they're just coming at you, they got no questions, they're not curious. How did you come to these conclusions? You know, they're not curious at all. They're immature as can be. And you're probably not going to get very far with them. You might as well talk about something else, deflect, or engage in the kind of behavior that will disabuse them of their unconscious programming without trying to put something else on top of them, without trying to indoctrinate them to how you think, but just try to alleviate them of how they think. And that might involve reductio ad absurdum. Ask them questions to the where they start to see the flaws, not sophomoric sophistry questions where you're trying to lead them into a goal that you have, but just poke a few little holes and see if they notice the inconsistencies in their ideology. The fourth one that moves outward is your scope and footprint and quality of awareness. Now, your scope of awareness might make you want to, in case you missed this earlier, we talked about somebody who they wanted to prevent malaria in a certain part of the world, and so they did these things to poison the mosquitoes, and they prevented malaria, but they also disrupted the food chain, which resulted in a bunch of crops failing, and then more people died from starvation than would have died from malaria, or then died from malaria the previous year, that kind of thing. And so they had a large footprint, a large scope of awareness. Oh, I want to help those people who are dying from malaria. But they didn't have good quality of awareness. Their actions weren't getting the intended results, and they had unintended consequences where more people died than they were trying to save. So you got to think about these kinds of things. Expansion of systemic consciousness, temporal breadth, past and future awareness, spatial geographic breadth, complexity, consciousness, interconnectedness, second and third order effects, sensitivity, understanding these things, emergent properties and systems thinking. Everything's interconnected. And if you change something in a complex system, you're more than likely, regardless of your intent, you're more than likely going to break something more so than you're probably going to fix it. And a lot of these young folks with all these great big ideas about how we should do government and all this sort of stuff, they don't get the second and third order effects. I remember when my oldest two daughters, they were probably, I don't know, 5 and 8. And we were going to go get a hot dog somewhere, and we were lamenting at the prices, that like high prices. I can't remember where we were. And the kids were like, well, when I grow up, I'm gonna open up a hot dog stand that just gives people hot dogs for free. I'm like, that's a great idea. I think you should do that. Where are you going to get the hot dogs? Are they going to give them to you for free? I mean, if so, great. Who's gonna work the hot dog stand? Are they going to do that for free? Where are they going to get their subsistence? How are they going to pay their rent and everything? And I had to think about it for a second. Oh, I don't think about that. And the problem with Calvinists and provisionists and things like that is there's a little more complex than that, but there's just a lot of things they haven't thought of. And so you can so your footprint of awareness, you need to have a very humble, realistic view of the quality of your awareness. Because if you're going to go make some changes to something, chances are you're going to break more than you're going to fix. Not that you're meaning to, but things do be complex. Let's see. Yeah, a lot of ideologies will do this self-deprecating thing, this feigned humility, because they're setting you up for something they want you to do or buy or say or something. Yeah, very much so. Under their own theology, it's strange that they don't even get into it with those who don't believe it. Under Calvinism, isn't God who decides that? But yeah. Yeah, it doesn't make any sense why a Calvinist would try to promote or argue their viewpoint, because in their doctrine, I'm believing what I'm believing by sovereign decree of God, and they couldn't overturn it if they wanted to. Scope or footprint, we've covered that one. And the last one, this is a really big one that people don't get, is to become meta-paradigmatic. Now, a paradigm is like your worldview, okay? It's the way you see things. And a paradigm serves three functions. Number one, it is to help you respond to reality. And number two is to update the paradigm. And number three is to conserve the paradigm. Or the second one is to conserve the paradigm. The third one is to respond to novelty. Okay. That's what a paradigm is supposed to do. Help you react to the environment appropriately, conserve the paradigm, respond to novelty. And in no particular order. And as long as your paradigm's working, say your paradigm says, apples fall from trees at 32 feet per second and it accelerates at 32 feet per second. Well, as long as that keeps happening, you're fine. But then if you have never seen a bird before and you see a bird falling and then suddenly they swoop up and they start flying up, I'm like, well, I need to adjust my paradigm. There's something wrong. Or, so now you have two choices. Like say, well, my paradigm's right and things fall and that thing's wrong. Or you can adjust and update your paradigm to account for what's going on with birds. And then now it could be complicated. You have to develop theories of, wind speed, velocity, whether or not it's an African or European swallow, and lift and Boyle's law. You have to learn, you have to come up with all that kind of stuff. And that's complicated. Who wants to do that? It's a lot easier just to say it's wrong and stick with my paradigm the way it is. See? And that's what ideologues do. That's what Calvinists and provisionists, that's what they're doing. And it's hard to get out of that cycle. It's a vicious cycle that's, you don't know you're in it. So meta-paradigmatic capacity. This is the outward correlation of the locus of authority and the locus of validation. It shifts from being constrained by mental models to being able to hold models lightly. Like I can jump in, I can hold Calvinism and provisionism and free grace theology and dispensationalism and covenantal. I can hold them all out here, and I can jump in and out of any one of them that I choose. Okay. And you can move fluidly between them. Now, what would be, in reality, I always like to do the grocery store test. All these different systems of theology that we're mentioning. If you mature, you're going to be beyond them, and you're going to see them all as being as silly as Santa Claus. Well, actually, the older you get, Santa Claus actually starts to make a little more sense. But you get the idea. It's just make believe. It's like Jumanji. It's like a Rector set. It's Dungeons and Dragons. Okay, it doesn't matter. There's no correlates in those kinds of theologies to the real world. There are no correlates. Okay, there are some broken clocks that are right twice a day, but there's no real correlates. And that will cause you to become, there's going to be a proxy between you and reality, and you're not going to respond well to reality, and reality is going to kick your tail eventually. We have an entire series on Colossians, which you should probably go listen to instead of just spouting ideology. I'm removing comments from people that just can't, the immature folks who can't seem to just participate in a mature way with the content that we're addressing here. So with metaparadigmatic capacity in different models, it's known as second tier thinking, yellow turquoise in spiral dynamics, stage 5 or higher in Fowler, inter-individual in Keegan, McGilchrist, right hemisphere, meta-flexibility, individuation beyond archetypal possession. So you're moving outside the paradigm. I no longer need to be a CrossFit enthusiast or a so what paradigm really affects everybody right now? Right now, other than these little theological systems that we deal with in our little circles, okay? Other than that, what we're really dealing with is Newtonian cosmology, Cartesian duality, that kind of thing. Those are your unconscious programmings. Okay. Post-Enlightenment rationalism, materialist reductionalism. So all the Calvinists who are commenting down here, they don't know. They're blind to the fact that they are Cartesian. I got somebody over here who keeps posting Colossians 2:8. Beware lest philosophy spoil you. Any man spoil you through philosophy or vain deceit, according to the traditions of men, after the rudiments of the world, not after Christ. That kind of thing. I think I quoted the King James, and he's got it in something else. But what he doesn't realize is that he is promoting Cartesian dualistic philosophy by being a Calvinist. His intuitions are formed by Newtonian cosmology. He is a materialist reductionalist. He's operating in accordance with post-Enlightenment rationalism. You see, how do you become meta-paradigmatic outside of all that? How do you stop being held down by those things? Propositional normativity, okay? People who are posting all this stuff, they're subject to all those things. And it's as silly seeing them. It's amazing they have the ability to type, because seeing them say these things is like, seeing a toddler do something. It's sad to see people, the sea turtles who will never make it, the adults who will never make it to sage stage of their life. This is not going to happen. So becoming metaparadigmatic. And what do I have here? And then seeing clearly is a concept that would come after. When you put all this together, the Bible, I have a video out there called Seeing Clearly. And seeing clearly is the emergent result of the other 5 things converging, including the 5 loci of maturity coming into the self, and the 5 horizons expanding out farther. The more both of those happen, the more clearly you can see. And the more clearly you can see, the less you need to rely on the particular arrangements of words. And the reason people in here need to rely on particular arrangements of words, like I need to adhere to Calvinism, is because they can't see clearly. They need the GPS because they can't see the landmark they're headed to. They can't see it. So seeing clearly is the outward manifestation of internalized loci, the first 5 things we covered, and an expanded perception and consciousness of things that move outward. In metaphorical terms, seeing clearly is what happens when the mind no longer needs the world to conform to its biases, but you can see it as it is. So it's a seeing clearly is more of a practical summary of all these things rather than a separate category. So in 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 12, Paul says, and I'm a little Bible app here. For now we see through a glass darkly, but then face to face. Now I know in part, but then shall I know even as also I am known. So there's a component to growth that gradually brings vision with it, the ability to perceive and see things very clearly. these people, I can't tell if they're joking, if they're making fun of Calvinists, or if people who need straitjackets are in our chat section. I can't tell. But we do have a video out there. It's even a short video, so you might be able to keep your attention span for half of it. It's like 3 minutes or less, called There Is No Gospel in Calvinism. So go watch them. So we want you to see clearly. So now that you've seen all this, to reconsider real quickly in a visual way, you can see that these 5 things, authority, blame, responsibility, control, and validation, are things that move internal the person. Okay. And then there are things that move outside, away from the person, that grow in their ability, and that is perspectival capacity, agentic capacity, curiosity, your scope and footprint of awareness, and metaparadigmatic. This guy says that it sounds like Gnostic mumbo jumbo. Of course it sounds like that to you because you're a baby. This is for more advanced growth and transformation audience, okay? Which apparently is not you. What I want to do now is take a few minutes and look through some of the comments. If you have questions, start posting your questions now, and I'm going to take the next few minutes before we close off the session, look at comments and respond to as many as I can before we close out. Let's see. This guy says, how much bad theology does it take to destroy the gospel? It's depressing seeing all the division, knowing that we are all seeking the same God. A lot of technical debt. This guy's happy where John Owen was. We are happy to be way beyond where John Owen was. I don't think that person's going to contribute anything useful, so I'm going to put them in timeout for 30 minutes so they don't spam. I want to save the comment section. I want to save the comment section for people who actually want to try to grow. So he says, Geo says, the more you talk, the more I hear 2 Peter 1 in my mind. It seems like the same thing, only worded differently. Maybe that's just me. Well, I'm thinking of the end of 2 Peter, about the holy men spake as they were moved of God. What part of 1 Peter 1 are you talking about? Divine nature, add to, okay, I can see this. Add to your knowledge temperance, and to temperance patience, and to patience godliness, and to godliness brotherly kindness. Yeah, I can see that. I could probably make this thing a little bit bigger and maybe even share that screen out if we want to look at some scripture passages if we want to. Just because I do not like it does not make it false. Okay. And just because somebody disagrees with it doesn't mean it's because they don't like it. Huh. Interesting that you have empathy on the list. Yeah, empathy is an interesting thing because, in one sense, it's good and necessary. People tend to have empathy for those who are like near of kin to them and more like them, and it's very useful for the survival of, say, the young. And beyond that, empathy can be more harmful than good, especially if it's impulsive empathy. And an overabundance of impulsive empathy from a mother to a child can result in raising a narcissistic child. And that's not something that you want to have happen. And if you take empathy overboard, if we're talking about perspective taking, we're really talking about the ability to understand where somebody else is coming from. Today, empathy has kind of taken this meaning. It's taken on this meaning where the entire rest of the world is supposed to revolve around this person's needs. And that's not, no adult should be getting empathy like that at all. So would you say that Second Peter 1 would be a good example of the spiral development, or is that something different? Well, that would be fun to look into if we're talking about adding all these things. Giving diligence to add faith to virtue and virtue to knowledge. So it depends on what you mean by these words. Because the word for faith in the Bible, the way I now understand faith, which has taken me years to come to this, is that faith is the embodiment of trust, fidelity, and reliability. And then to expand that further in the movement toward some kind of proper orientation associated with a goal. And an example of faith that you would see every day is like somebody saying, I think it's worthwhile to build a bridge over this tunnel. You're committing yourself to bring about the existence of something that doesn't exist yet because you have a vision for it to be there and you think that it will be beneficial. And when you move toward the goal of building that bridge without the certainty that it will even be possible, that's faith. Movement with vision, and having full fidelity, trust, and reliability embodied in yourself when you move. So you're not, you know, half-heartedly putting the ark together. Well, if the giraffes drown, they drown. You can't be like that. You got to be all in. If you're committing to do it, that's really what faith. Look at faith in Hebrews 11:7. When you start describing what the Bible really means by that, so you could really dig into some of this kind of stuff. Godly patience. Yeah, you could find correlates for all of these things and the things that we just talked about for sure. And especially charity. We didn't talk a lot about charity today, agape, but one of the things we highly emphasize on this channel is love. I thought, did I miss that on this other one? I didn't talk about, yeah, charity, agape, love. I just didn't define it. I didn't take the time to define it yet. And now I can't get my application back. There we go. All right, let me go down. Let me see what other comments we have. And for those of you who are still here, there are 33 of you still here. I do want to remind you that we would really appreciate if you could support the channel. I'll just show this real quick. Oh, stop that. Apparently can't get rid of that. Yeah, we would appreciate it if you would support the channel. We couldn't do this without people like you, so think about that. What else do we have? Let me get rid of this and go back to this sign here. See, I think we had a couple. Let's say here. Those therefore, with whom it reprobates is not okay. Oh, somebody's quoting Calvinists. Well, let's go fix that. We don't. Oh, this video would be such a great FSI session. Yeah, I'm looking forward to doing FSI again soon. For those of you, some of y'all are aware of the situation that I'm going through, and that is there's a lot going on with that. I was just this past Wednesday night, I spent time drafting and proofreading some stuff going along with that situation. Those of you who know. And this kind of thing. A man never in any instance wills anything contrary to his inclination. Like, why would I understand? I don't understand Calvinists who run around saying sola scriptura and then they feel the need to quote stuff like this. Why would they quote stuff like this? Why not quote from Acts chapter 10 or Romans chapter 2? Why don't you try that? We do not advocate free will as an axiomatic premise. All right, I don't see any new comments popping in. I appreciate those of you who hung out for the comments that we do have. I don't know why I can't get this thing to participate like I want it to. And let me just reiterate real quick. Thanks. We are on other social media platforms. Thanks for that. And before we go, please do consider reaching out and supporting what we got going on here. I think this work is very important. I really believe, and I'm really believe this. I really believe that if we could get there's a critical mass of people, that if we can get enough people engaged in what we're doing on this channel, we could do a couple of things. I think we can end Calvinism. Okay, we can bring people up to the cognitive level of awareness, raise people's generalized consciousness level and the threshold of entry into, say, worship assemblies and things like that, to where we could completely end Calvinism and get everybody turned back to Christ, the way that is Christ, and all the other ideologies too. But I think we can really make a dent in Calvinism not being a thing that's running around out there predatorily, invasively invading other churches and things like that. I really think we can make a difference. And I also think with our growth and transformation stuff that we can move a notch in the belt, maybe of all humanity, maybe in this country, of our current level of consciousness and awareness and capacity. What if we could take an entire country, put a blip on the radar, cause more people to pay attention, and somehow raise everybody's consciousness level one notch before we all check off this planet? Wouldn't that be a great place to be if people's consciousness levels were higher? I really think that we can make a dent in humanity in a positive way. If you want to be part of that, please consider supporting. That is a big vision, but I think it can happen. Thank you all for being here. Thanks for watching. Thanks for commenting. May the Lord bless you, and good day.